Yes, Victor Marley, Norwegian Union. Mr. Chairman, I have three questions, and I'd rather they were not rhetorical, because I believe that the committee deserves some clarification on them. The first one, you have, to a certain degree, answered who is next on the list, who is next on the radar. You mentioned the 83%, and you mentioned finances, and that may be where the watchful eye of ADCOM lands next. I was just wondering, is there any other issues, any other reprimands or warnings that we possibly can expect in the next years? My second question relates to policy. I want to make it clear to the Executive Committee, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman, that if voted, the Norwegian Union is in actual fact receiving a warning for being compliant. We are compliant with Working Policy Basic Principles BA 6005, which says the Church rejects any system or philosophy which discriminates against anyone on the basis of race, color, or gender. And it continues, the Church bases this position on principles clearly enunciated in the Bible, the writings of Ellen White, and the official pronouncements of the General Conference. Further, we are compliant with Policy BA 6010 on employment, which says the World Church supports non-discrimination in employment practices and policies and upholds the principle that both men and women, without regard to race and color, shall be given full and equal opportunity within the Church to develop the knowledge and skills needed for the building up of the Church. Positions of service and responsibility on all levels of Church activity shall be open to all on the basis of the individual's qualifications. Now, the problem, of course, is the exception clause in BA 6010, which states, except those requiring ordination to the gospel ministry. In parenthesis, that exception clause strides against everything else that is written in policy and our fundamental beliefs. So I would like some information, Mr. Chairman, on what GC ADCOM is doing to address that inconsistency, because I think therein lies the key. Are we to do away with our basic principles and fundamental beliefs, or are we to do something with the exception clause? Are we an organization that promotes discrimination or not? My third question is this: how does this end, Mr. Chairman? What is your exit strategy? How do you propose that we move on? What we need now are not warnings and reprimands. What we need now is constructive and creative leadership. Leadership that brings consensus, not conflict. Now, I believe that consensus is possible. The Norwegian Union has repeatedly asked for and is waiting for that leadership. We are flexible and we are listening. We're ready to comply with a solution to this policy conundrum. So those are my questions. Who's next? How are you working to resolve the contradiction in policy? And how are we planning to move on from this issue? I recommend to my colleagues here in this room that we perhaps think again before voting this action, because there are these questions and many others that I don't think we have enough clarification on.
All right. Thank you for your opinions, because much of that was an opinion. And I, for me to try and respond to an opinion is a little bit more difficult, and we don't have the time. But I will try to do my best, and there may be one or two others who may wish to help us. Other areas, I already indicated we are looking at the financial areas. There are a couple other areas that may come into play in the future in terms of institutions or organizations that are not promoting and living up to, especially in the area of our biblical understanding of creation. The homosexuality situation is looming large, but we don't have anything at this point where we would have to take action, but we could at some point. So the aspect of discrimination, I think I'll just have to leave it with the tension that you have already indicated exists, because the policy does have that exception. And this body would have to remove that exception, and beyond that, it probably would have to go to a general conference session because it has been there 3 times. So I guess that's, something that certainly is at the basis of much of the discussion. The exit strategy, I have to tell you, I'm not quite sure. By God's grace, we hope that this body and that all of you, as you leave, will not be so absorbed by what happened on Tuesday afternoon that we forget what happened earlier before this particular item, which was an attempt to help us focus upon the real strategy, and that is a master strategy of evangelization for the entire world. I will go. And I know that when we leave here, sometimes we think only of some of the contentious parts. Annual councils are really full of mission. Now, in terms of the exit strategy, I'm open to the Lord's leading myself, and I think all of us are. Thank you.